Hello, wonderful people. I hope you guys are all doing well. Before we start, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel if you like these kind of videos. Also, let us know where are you guys listening us from. Okay then, let's begin. Batman is often seen as a figure of strength, justice, and resilience. A vigilante whose sole mission is to rid Gotham of its criminal elements, he has become an icon not just for the city, but for anyone who believes in the power of one individual to make a difference. But what if there is more to Batman's fight than just his sense of justice? What if Batman's relentless crusade against crime is, at its core, a manifestation of his deeper desire for control? At first glance, Batman appears to be fighting for Gotham, working tirelessly to bring criminals to justice and restore order in a city plagued by corruption and lawlessness. However, if we peel back the layers of his psyche and examine the motivations behind his actions, it becomes clear that his fight is not just about saving the city, but about something much more personal: his need to impose control on a chaotic world. Batman's fight against crime begins, in many ways, with the trauma he experienced as a child, watching his parents gunned down in front of him. This traumatic event sets in motion a quest for justice, but more importantly, a quest for control. Control over the chaos that took away his family, control over his own fate, and control over Gotham's destiny. It is this insatiable need for control that drives him to take matters into his own hands, to become the Dark Knight, and to fight an unrelenting battle against the forces of crime that threaten to unravel everything he has worked so hard to build. The psychological roots of Batman's need for control. Batman's desire for control is deeply rooted in the trauma of losing his parents in such a violent and senseless manner. That moment of helplessness, the inability to prevent the tragedy, is something that haunts Bruce Wayne throughout his life. His desire to fight crime, then, is not merely about making Gotham safer. It is about preventing further loss and ensuring that he has the power to protect the people he loves. By taking control of Gotham's criminal underworld, Batman hopes to take control of the factors that led to his parents' death and prevent any future tragedies from happening. In many ways, Batman's fight against crime is his attempt to impose order on a world that has continually defied him. From the death of his parents to the chaos that reigns in Gotham, he is constantly faced with the fact that life is unpredictable, unfair, and uncontrollable. This unpredictability terrifies Batman, and he responds by taking extreme measures to gain control over his environment. His fight against crime is a manifestation of this need for control, as he believes that if he can rid the world of its criminal elements, he can restore some semblance of order to his life and the city. Batman SIP's methods: a need for absolute control. Batman's methods of fighting crime further highlight his desire for control. His meticulously planned strategies, his training, and his use of technology all reflect his obsession with controlling every aspect of his mission. Batman leaves nothing to chance. Everything is calculated, every move is premeditated, and every plan is designed to ensure that he remains in control of the situation. This obsession with control is evident in the way he approaches crime fighting. He doesn't just stop criminals, he seeks to completely eradicate them from Gotham's streets. This need for control also extends to the people around Batman. He often isolates himself from his allies, maintaining a strict sense of autonomy in his work. While he has trusted companions like Robin, Alfred, and Commissioner Gordon, Batman's need to remain in charge of every situation often leads him to take on more than he can handle alone. His reluctance to fully trust others with his mission reflects a fear of losing control not just of the situation, but of his identity as Gotham's protector. Batman's autonomy becomes his greatest strength, but also his greatest flaw, as it leads him to push people away and at times to make decisions without fully considering the consequences. The battle between control and chaos. Batman's fight against crime is not just a physical battle, it is a battle between control and chaos. Gotham, as a city, represents chaos, a place where crime runs rampant, where corruption seeps into every institution, and where justice seems out of reach. Batman's very existence in Gotham is an attempt to counter this chaos, to create a sense of order in a city that is seemingly beyond saving. However, the more Batman fights to impose control, the more he begins to realize that true order cannot be achieved through force alone. This conflict between Batman's need for control and the chaos he faces every day is at the heart of his struggle. No matter how much he plans, no matter how many criminals he takes down, there is always another threat lurking in the shadows. The unpredictability of crime in Gotham keeps Batman on edge, as he constantly seeks to control what is inherently uncontrollable. In many ways, this battle becomes a metaphor for Batman's inner conflict, a conflict between his desire to control every aspect of his mission and his growing realization that some things are beyond his power to change. The limits of control Batman sets. Struggle with himself. Batman's quest for control, while driven by a desire for justice, also reflects his inner turmoil. As a child, he was powerless to save his parents, and that sense of powerlessness continues to haunt him. His obsessive need for control is a direct response to that trauma, but it also causes him to grapple with his own limitations. No matter how much power he amasses, no matter how much he controls Gotham's criminal underworld, Batman is ultimately unable to control the most important thing: his own vulnerability. This vulnerability is at the core of Batman's struggle. No matter how much he tries to impose order on Gotham, there are always forces beyond his control, whether they are his own emotions, the unpredictability of crime, or the growing threats from supervillains like the Joker and Bane. The realization that he cannot control everything, that he is not invincible, forces Batman to confront his own limitations. His desire for control becomes a double-edged sword. It is what drives him to fight, but it also isolates him, causing him to push away the very people who could help him. This internal battle is one that Batman struggles with throughout his career, as he constantly seeks balance between control and acceptance. Batman sits desire for control, a cycle of fear and resolution. At its core, Batman's fight against crime is a cycle of fear and resolution. Batman is driven by the fear of losing control again, the fear of being powerless to protect those he loves. This fear drives him to fight crime relentlessly, but it also traps him in a cycle where he must constantly reaffirm his control over Gotham. Every victory against a criminal, every success in his mission is a small resolution in this ongoing battle against his own fear. However, the cycle is never-ending. No matter how many criminals Batman defeats, no matter how much control he exerts over Gotham's underworld, the city continues to present new challenges and threats. This cycle of fear and resolution keeps Batman in a perpetual state of struggle as he continuously seeks to impose control on a world that resists it. His need for control becomes both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness, as it drives him to continue fighting, but also prevents him from ever truly finding peace. As we continue to explore Batman's fight against crime and the underlying desire for control, it becomes clear that his struggle is not only external, but deeply internal. Batman's efforts to impose order on Gotham's chaos are in many ways a reflection of his battle with his own demons. This need for control, while it defines much of Batman's identity, also becomes a source of conflict for him, both as a hero and as a person. The nature of Batman sips control over Gotham, fear of chaos. At the core of Batman's desire for control is a deep-seated fear of chaos and anarchy. Gotham is a city teetering on the edge of destruction, filled with corruption, crime, and moral decay. This instability in Gotham reflects the chaos Batman feels within himself, stemming from the trauma of losing his parents. As a child, Batman was powerless in the face of chaos. He could not control the violent event that robbed him of his family. This sense of helplessness is something he has spent his entire life trying to avoid. By fighting crime and trying to impose order on Gotham, Batman seeks to prove to himself that he is no longer helpless, that he can control the forces of chaos that once took everything from him. Gotham, with its constant cycle of crime and disorder, represents a reflection of Batman's own inner turmoil. The city's descent into chaos mirrors the conflict that Batman faces within himself, the desire for justice and order, but also the fear that his efforts to restore balance will always be futile. This duality, the struggle to control Gotham's criminal landscape while battling his internal fear of chaos, defines much of Batman's motivations. Batman's need to control Gotham's criminal underworld is, therefore, a manifestation of his attempt to impose order on a world that has been turned upside down by his own trauma. Each criminal he brings to justice, each villain he defeats, is a symbolic victory over the chaos he feels inside. But this constant need to exert control also leads to a cycle of frustration, as Gotham remains in a perpetual state of crime, making it impossible for Batman to ever fully realize his vision of order. The paradox of control. Batman sips autonomy and isolation. Another aspect of Batman's desire for control is his need for autonomy. Batman works alone, isolating himself from others to maintain absolute control over every aspect of his mission. This autonomy stems from his fear of relying on others or trusting anyone to share his burden. Batman believes that only he can protect Gotham and prevent it from descending into further chaos. As a result, he pushes away the very people who could help him, whether it's his trusted allies like Robin, Nightwing, or even Alfred. Batman's fear of losing control is deeply tied to his isolation. He fears that by relying on others, he will lose the ability to dictate the course of action. This desire for complete autonomy prevents Batman from building stronger, more collaborative relationships with his allies, as he believes that doing so will dilute his control over Gotham. However, this autonomy becomes a source of weakness. Batman's inability to trust others and share his burdens limits his ability to function effectively as a leader. His fear of losing control makes him emotionally isolated, creating internal friction that prevents him from fully utilizing the support network that exists around him. This paradox of control, where Batman needs to maintain autonomy to feel powerful but also suffers from the loneliness and isolation that come with it, creates a complex internal dynamic. Batman is torn between his desire to control everything and the reality that his isolation makes it harder to achieve his goal of restoring order to Gotham. His autonomy becomes a double-edged sword, as it both empowers him and prevents him from being as effective as he could be with the support of others. Batman sits relationships. Control versus trust. Batman's inability to trust others is a central aspect of his relationships. His refusal to share the burden of his mission with his allies stems from his desire to remain in control of every aspect of his work. This often manifests in his interactions with figures like Robin, Nightwing, and even his closest confidant, Alfred. While Batman trusts these individuals in certain ways, he ultimately keeps them at arm's length. He refuses to allow anyone to become too deeply involved in his mission, fearing that their presence might undermine his control. This desire for control also creates tension between Batman and his allies. For example, Robin, who is often portrayed as Batman's most trusted sidekick, is frequently caught in the middle of Batman's struggle for control. Batman is reluctant to allow Robin to take the lead in certain situations, as he feels the need to maintain authority over the situation. This dynamic often leads to strained relationships, as Robin and other allies feel sidelined by Batman's insistence on retaining complete control. Yet, despite this, there are moments when Batman's allies push him to relinquish some of that control. Robin, Nightwing, and others occasionally challenge Batman's decisions, questioning his methods and offering alternative approaches. These moments highlight the tension between Batman's desire for control and his need for trust and collaboration. Ultimately, Batman learns, albeit reluctantly, that he cannot continue his mission alone. While he initially resists sharing the burden with his allies, Batman begins to recognize that true strength lies in trusting others to share responsibility, even if it means relinquishing some control. The impact of Batman's desire for control on his decision-making. Batman's overwhelming need for control impacts his decision-making in significant ways. His desire to control the situation at all costs often leads him to make decisions based solely on logic and strategy, without fully considering the emotional or human consequences. Batman's reliance on meticulous planning and tactical thinking leads him to sometimes overlook the emotional toll his decisions take on others. This is especially evident in his interactions with those closest to him. Batman's obsession with control often leads him to push his allies to the brink, demanding that they follow his orders without question. His unwillingness to trust others sometimes results in fractured relationships, as his allies feel that their voices are not heard or valued. For example, his relationship with Robin is often strained due to Batman's need to control the situation, and he sometimes distances himself from Alfred, even though Alfred has been his confidant for years. This dynamic also plays out in Batman's moral decisions. His desire to control Gotham's fate sometimes leads him to take extreme measures that may be morally questionable. Batman's strict no-kill rule, for example, is a cornerstone of his moral code, but his obsession with control sometimes forces him into situations where he must make difficult ethical choices. His decisions are frequently driven by a fear of losing control, even at the cost of his own moral compass. Batman sips inner conflict. Control is both a strength and a burden. As Batman's journey unfolds, we see that his desire for control is both a strength and a burden. On one hand, it allows him to be highly effective in his fight against crime. His ability to plan ahead, anticipate his enemies' moves, and maintain strict discipline has made him one of the most formidable crime fighters in the world. However, on the other hand, his need for control often isolates him and makes it difficult for him to form meaningful connections with others. It forces him to navigate the world through a lens of fear, distrust, and emotional distance. Batman's struggle for control is a central aspect of his character arc. It drives him to fight for justice, but it also prevents him from fully realizing his potential as a leader, a mentor, and a human being. As Batman's story progresses, he begins to learn that true power does not come from control alone. It comes from balance, knowing when to take charge and when to trust others, recognizing that vulnerability and emotional openness are just as important as strength and discipline. As we continue to examine Batman's relentless pursuit of control and the impact it has on both his personal life and his approach to Gotham, we start to see how this need for control plays a central role in the larger narrative of his crusade against crime. Despite his immense strength, intellect, and resources, Batman's desire to control every aspect of his mission reveals a paradox within his character. The very thing that gives him power also holds him back, preventing him from fully embracing the connections that could make him a more effective hero. Batman Sip's desire for control and his role as Gotham Sip's protector. At the heart of Batman's fight against crime is a desire to shape the fate of Gotham. Batman's decision to take matters into his own hands stems from a belief that Gotham cannot be saved by traditional means. The city is steeped in corruption, crime, and injustice, and Batman believes that if left unchecked, these forces will continue to consume it. In order to prevent this from happening, Batman works tirelessly to control the criminal underworld, acting as the city's sole protector and deciding who lives and dies based on his own moral code. However, Gotham's ongoing chaos and the rise of new, more formidable villains like the Joker, Bane, and others highlight the limitations of Batman's solitary mission. No matter how much control Batman exerts over the city, the truth remains that Gotham's deep-seated issues, rooted in poverty, corruption, and inequality, cannot be resolved by one man alone. Batman's struggle to control every element of Gotham's crime problem represents a symbolic attempt to impose order on a fundamentally disordered city, but it also becomes a losing battle. This unrelenting desire to control Gotham's fate leads to Batman's continual internal conflict. As Gotham descends into further chaos, Batman is forced to confront the realization that no matter how much he tries to shape the future of the city, there are forces beyond his control. This struggle between Batman's desire for order and the city's unpredictable nature exemplifies a key theme in Batman's character: the inevitable conflict between trying to control the uncontrollable and learning to accept that some things, no matter how hard you fight, cannot be controlled. The cost of control. Batman Sip's strained relationships. The most apparent consequence of Batman's need for control is the toll it takes on his relationships with those around him. Batman's desire to protect Gotham at all costs leaves little room for personal connections. His emotional isolation is a direct result of his obsessive need to remain in control, even if it means alienating those closest to him. Batman's strained relationship with Robin and other sidekicks offers a clear example of how his obsession with control manifests. Batman's reluctance to trust others fully and his tendency to operate independently create tension with his allies. Robin, for instance, frequently questions Batman's decisions, especially when it comes to his authoritarian approach to fighting crime. As a young hero, Robin wants to take on more responsibility and make his own decisions, but Batman's unwillingness to delegate authority or trust others often creates a sense of frustration and resentment. Similarly, Batman's relationship with Alfred, while deeply trusting, is still tinged with Batman's emotional distance. Alfred, as a father figure, constantly tries to show Batman the value of vulnerability and openness, but Batman's desire for control prevents him from accepting this help at times. Even his dynamic with Commissioner Gordon is often strained, as Batman operates outside the law, undermining the traditional methods of justice, while Gordon strives to uphold order through legal means. In many ways, Batman's control over every aspect of his life and mission isolates him from human connection. His inability to trust those around him prevents him from forming deep, supportive relationships that could help him shoulder the burden of protecting Gotham. Ultimately, his struggle for control creates a cycle of loneliness and isolation that prevents him from being the hero he could be if he learned to rely on others and share the burden of justice. Batman sits, fear of losing control, a path to his undoing. Underlying Batman's need for control is a deep-rooted fear of losing it. The trauma from his parents' death and the helplessness he felt as a child has shaped his entire worldview. His fight against crime is not just about justice. It is about his need to ensure that the same kind of violence and randomness that claimed his family never happens again. This deep-seated fear is what drives his every move, his every decision, and his meticulous planning. However, the constant drive for control is ultimately unsustainable. Batman's obsessive need to manage every detail, to plan for every possible scenario, prevents him from adapting to the chaotic, unpredictable nature of Gotham's criminal underworld. No matter how much he tries to control the situation, there are always unforeseen variables. New villains, unforeseen alliances, and Gotham's unpredictable political climate that throw his plans into disarray. This fear of losing control is particularly evident in Batman's interactions with Gotham's criminal masterminds. Villains like the Joker, Bane, and others represent forces of chaos that threaten to undermine the very order Batman seeks to impose. The Joker, in particular, represents everything Batman fears: anarchy, unpredictability, and the erosion of the moral code that Batman has worked so hard to uphold. Each time Batman faces a new threat, his desire for control is tested. The more he fights to impose order on the chaos, the more he finds himself confronted by forces beyond his comprehension or control. This conflict between Batman's need to control and the reality that control is impossible drives much of the psychological tension in his journey. Batman sits desire for control as a reflection of his humanity. At the heart of Batman's desire for control is a deeper question of his humanity. Batman's struggle against crime and chaos can be seen as a reflection of his inner conflict between his human nature and his role as Gotham's unyielding protector. His need for control stems from a desire to overcome the limitations of being human, his vulnerability, his emotional pain, and his fear of loss. However, Batman's obsession with control often blinds him to the human connections and the sense of community that could help him achieve his ultimate goal of justice. His refusal to acknowledge his emotional vulnerabilities and his continuous drive to suppress his fear create a tension between his desire for control and his need for acceptance and collaboration. Batman is in many ways a man trapped between his need for perfection and his innate human limitations. This struggle between control and humanity is what makes Batman such a compelling character. He is not a god, but a man struggling with his own weaknesses, fears, and desires. His fight against crime is not just a battle for Gotham's soul, it is a battle for his own, as he strives to overcome the chaotic forces within himself. The ultimate lesson Batman learns is that while control may provide a sense of power, it is vulnerability and trust in others that lead to true strength. As we delve further into Batman's need for control and its impact on his role as a protector, it becomes clear that the consequences of this obsessive desire for control extend into every facet of his life, including his most significant battles and moral decisions. Batman's fight against crime is not just a reaction to external threats, it is deeply tied to his internal psychological conflict. His efforts to impose control are often a defense mechanism against the chaos he has endured and continues to face, but they also expose deeper struggles with his identity, relationships, and the very nature of justice. Batman sips control as a mask for deeper insecurities. At the heart of Batman's need for control lies a complex web of insecurities. While he projects an image of unyielding strength, discipline, and invulnerability, the reality is that his obsessive desire for control stems from an intense fear of losing what little stability he has in his life. The trauma from his childhood, the brutal murder of his parents, has left Batman with an unrelenting need to control his environment, as it is the only way he believes he can avoid further emotional loss. However, his inability to fully control his surroundings, the people he loves, and the chaos of Gotham constantly puts his vulnerabilities into stark contrast. This internal struggle between his desire for control and the deep-seated insecurity that drives it creates tension in Batman's decisions and actions. While he believes that maintaining control over his mission and the criminals of Gotham is necessary to protect the city and maintain his sense of purpose, it also creates a facade that makes him appear unapproachable and disconnected. This facade serves to mask the deeper emotional scars that haunt him and prevent him from fully addressing the underlying pain that fuels his obsession. The irony of control. Batman, as a reflection of Gotham City's systemic failures. Batman's need to impose order on Gotham mirrors the systemic failures within the city itself. Gotham is a city defined by its corruption, violence, and chaos. Much like Batman's own psyche, which is dominated by a need to exert control in the face of deep personal trauma. Batman's fight against crime can be seen as an attempt to fix the city's broken systems, but his methods, his obsessive control over every detail of his work, often perpetuate the very issues he seeks to solve. Batman's approach to crime fighting, which is largely autonomous and uncompromising, reflects the authoritarian tendencies of the very systems of power he is trying to eliminate. Just as Gotham's corrupt political system allows crime to thrive, Batman's methods, focused on personal action, discipline, and solitary authority, serve to keep him isolated from those who could support his mission. Instead of working with Gotham's institutions to create sustainable change, Batman isolates himself, believing that only he can wield the necessary power to restore order. This approach, while well-intentioned, becomes part of the cycle of dysfunction that defines both Batman and Gotham. In some ways, Batman's fight against crime can be seen as a critique of the very systems he seeks to dismantle. By taking matters into his own hands, Batman attempts to correct the mistakes of Gotham's leadership, but his actions are a direct reflection of the unchecked, centralized power he despises. This irony underscores a fundamental paradox in Batman's character. While he is trying to eliminate the chaos and corruption in Gotham, his methods, born from his need for control, contribute to the perpetuation of that same chaos. Batman sips struggle with power and responsibility. As Batman's role as Gotham's protector deepens, so too does the weight of his responsibility. His obsession with control is intricately tied to the immense burden he places on himself. Batman believes that in order to keep Gotham safe, he must take responsibility for everything, every threat, every decision, and every outcome. This overwhelming sense of responsibility becomes both a source of power and a burden that isolates him from others. Batman's need for control is especially apparent in his moral code, his refusal to kill, his insistence on upholding justice through non-lethal means, and his obsessive dedication to protecting Gotham, even at the cost of his own happiness and well-being, reflect his internal struggle to wield power responsibly. However, this intense sense of responsibility can often cloud his judgment, causing him to make decisions that isolate him from his allies and prevent him from working in harmony with those who share his mission. The more Batman strives to maintain control over Gotham's fate, the more he distances himself from those around him. His inability to share the burden of responsibility with others leads to strained relationships, particularly with his closest allies. His autonomy, while necessary for his mission, prevents him from fully trusting others to help guide his decisions. This sense of moral responsibility becomes not only a reflection of his need for control, but also a cause of his personal isolation and emotional strain. Control as a catalyst for Batman's greatest fears. Ultimately, Batman's obsession with control is rooted in a deeper fear, his fear of failure and his fear of losing the city he has sworn to protect. His fight against crime is not just about eliminating Gotham's criminal elements, it is about maintaining his own sense of power and purpose. Batman's fear of failure, whether it is the fear of losing Gotham or failing the people who rely on him, drives his need for absolute control. This fear is amplified by the constant threats he faces from villains who push him to his limits, enemies like the Joker, Bane, and others, who represent the chaotic forces that Batman desperately seeks to defeat. The more Batman attempts to control the situation, the more he is confronted by the reality that true control is impossible. His fear of failure leads him to make decisions that are often reactive rather than proactive. He becomes trapped in a cycle of trying to maintain control, which ultimately leads to him questioning his own methods and his place in Gotham's future. A shift in Batman's perspective. Embracing vulnerability. As Batman's struggle with control intensifies, he begins to realize that true strength does not lie in dominance or the ability to dictate every outcome. The more he faces his fears and vulnerabilities, the more he understands that the fight for Gotham is not about imposing control, but about learning to accept the uncertainty that comes with protecting a city steeped in chaos. Batman's ability to embrace his own vulnerabilities, his fears, his flaws, and his emotional scars becomes the key to his evolution as a hero. By accepting that he cannot control everything, Batman begins to work with others, form stronger relationships, and trust his allies to help him achieve his mission. His vulnerability, once seen as a weakness, becomes a source of strength that allows him to become a more effective protector of Gotham. Ultimately, Batman learns that the path to true justice and peace is not about control, it is about resilience, trust, and the willingness to adapt to the ever-changing landscape of Gotham's crime and corruption. His desire for control, once a defining characteristic of his identity, becomes a lesson in accepting the unpredictability of life, both in Gotham and within himself. Batman stood on the rooftop of Gotham's tallest building, the wind whipping through his cape as he surveyed the city below. It was a typical night in Gotham, dark, foreboding, and alive with the constant hum of crime. To most, Gotham was a city of chaos, a place where villains and corruption ruled the streets. To Batman, it was a place that he had vowed to control. For years, he had fought to impose order on the chaos, to bring the criminals of Gotham to justice, and to restore peace to a city on the brink of collapse. But as he watched the lights flicker beneath him, the weight of his mission settled heavily on his shoulders. No matter how hard he tried, no matter how many criminals he brought to justice, Gotham continued to spiral into madness. It seemed as if control was always just out of reach. The origins of Batman's need for control traced back to the most pivotal night of his life, his parents' murder. That moment of helplessness, standing in the alley with his mother and father's blood on his hands, had shaped him. The randomness of their deaths, the sheer brutality of it, had left him with a single, unshakable desire to control the world around him so that no one else would suffer the same fate. Batman's fight against crime was never just about making Gotham a safer place. It was about preventing the uncontrollable forces of chaos from taking what mattered most from him again. But the more Batman fought to control Gotham's destiny, the more he realized that he could never truly control the city. Criminals like the Joker, Bane, and the Scarecrow kept rising up, pushing him to his limits, testing his resolve. Gotham had a way of fighting back, of rejecting any effort to impose order. For every victory Batman achieved, the city seemed to find a way to reinforce its descent into madness. His fear of losing control was like a vice, tightening around him every time he faced a new threat. It wasn't just the city he wanted to control, it was everything. His meticulous plans, his daily routines, the way he structured his life all revolved around the need to keep chaos at bay. He kept Gotham at arm's length, only allowing a select few, like Alfred and Commissioner Gordon, to get close. He trusted them, but only so much. Deep down, Batman believed that to rely on others to share control would be a weakness. The idea that someone else could take the reins of his mission, could dictate the course of Gotham's future, was anathema to him. But as Gotham continued to test him, Batman began to feel the burden of this unyielding need for control. It wasn't just that the criminals were getting more dangerous, it was that his methods weren't working. The more Batman fought alone, the more he distanced himself from his allies, the less he could stop the city's inevitable descent into chaos. Robin had left, frustrated by Batman's refusal to let him take on more responsibility, and Alfred had started to distance himself, quietly voicing his concerns about the toll it was taking on Batman's mind and body. The breaking point came during his fight with Bane. In the dark pit of Gotham's underground prison, Batman realized how little control he truly had. Bane had broken him, not just physically, but psychologically. His body was bruised and battered, but it was the emotional scars that would linger the longest. Bane had exposed Batman's greatest fear, the fear that he was not invincible, that his control over Gotham was a fleeting illusion. For days, Batman lay in that pit, grappling with the realization that his obsessive need for control had pushed him too far. Gotham's crime wasn't going to end because he forced it to. The more he tried to control everything, the more things slipped through his fingers. His fear of losing Gotham, of failing his parents' memory, of losing control of his destiny, it had become his driving force, but it had also become his greatest weakness. When he finally emerged from the pit, broken but not defeated, Batman understood something that had eluded him for years. True strength didn't come from control. It came from the ability to accept what he couldn't control and to trust in others to carry part of the burden. For the first time, Batman understood that he couldn't do it alone. Gotham needed more than just a lone figure of fear. It needed a collective effort. His allies, Alfred, Gordon, Robin, were more than just tools in his crusade. They were essential to his success. The key to Gotham's salvation wasn't in Batman's solitary battle, but in working with those who shared his vision for a better city. As the days passed, Batman began to change. He reached out to those he had pushed away, mending the strained relationships he had neglected. Robin returned to his side, and together they began to form a more cohesive force. Batman learned to delegate, to trust, and to share the responsibility he had so long carried alone. Gotham, too, began to change. The people of the city, inspired by Batman's transformation, started to take their own stand. The bat signal, once a symbol of Batman's solitary vigilance, now became a beacon for a collective effort to restore order to Gotham. Batman's struggle for control had been a mirror of Gotham itself. Just as he fought to impose order on a chaotic world, Gotham fought against its own internal strife, its corruption, its systemic decay, and its violence. Batman, in his pursuit of control, had been trying to fix what was broken, but he learned that the path to redemption wasn't about controlling every detail. It was about understanding that true power lay in resilience, adaptability, and working together. Gotham's future wasn't about one man's fight. It was about the collective will of its people, joined by the efforts of its heroes. And so, Batman learned that the most profound victories didn't come from his strength, his planning, or his unyielding need to control the city. They came from his ability to confront his own weaknesses and fears, to trust those around him, and to let go of the idea that he had to do it all himself. The battle for Gotham's future would be fought not by one man, but by many, each contributing their strength, their ideals, and their desire for justice. Batman's fight against crime, once fueled by the desire for control, had become a symbol of something far more powerful: the power of community, the strength of vulnerability, and the relentless drive to overcome the chaos within and around us. As Batman steps further into this new phase of his life, we see him begin to navigate the complexities of trust, leadership, and vulnerability in ways that were previously unthinkable for him. His fight against crime is no longer driven by a solitary desire for control, but rather by a more collaborative, multifaceted approach. This shift, however, doesn't come without its challenges. Batman must continue to wrestle with his internal conflict, his urge to maintain control, his fear of losing grip on Gotham, and his deep-seated need to protect the people he loves. Batman sips leadership transformation, from solitude to shared responsibility. One of the most significant changes in Batman's character is his approach to leadership. Throughout his career, he has worked as a solitary figure, taking on the burden of Gotham's safety himself. However, the experiences he's gone through, especially his defeat by Bane, reveal that this method is not sustainable. The weight of carrying Gotham's fate on his shoulders alone has drained him emotionally, physically, and psychologically. But by acknowledging his vulnerabilities and embracing collaboration, Batman begins to transform from the lone vigilante into a leader who values shared responsibility. At the heart of this transformation is Batman's relationship with Robin and other key allies. His once strained partnership with Robin evolves into a true partnership. Batman learns to trust his sidekick's abilities and judgment, understanding that their combined strengths make them a more effective team. The way Batman embraces Robin's ideas and allows him to take the lead in some situations marks a significant shift in Batman's character. This is a Batman who is no longer driven by the need for control, but by the belief that Gotham's restoration requires a collective effort. This shift in leadership is also reflected in Batman's relationship with Alfred. For years, Alfred had been a silent supporter, but now Batman is more open to his wisdom, allowing himself to listen and learn from the fatherly figure who has always had his best interests at heart. This willingness to lean on Alfred, to accept advice and counsel, is a sign of Batman's evolving understanding of leadership. By relinquishing control and allowing his allies to play a more active role in their shared mission, Batman not only becomes a better leader, but also a more effective hero. His fear of losing control, once a crippling weakness, becomes a source of strength as he learns that vulnerability and collaboration are integral to success. The inner struggle, control, trust, and emotional growth. Despite his outward transformation, Batman continues to struggle with his inner demons. The desire for control still lingers within him, and there are moments when his old habits resurface. The fear of losing his grip on Gotham, the fear that chaos will once again overwhelm him, still threatens to undo the progress he has made. But the key difference now is that Batman is no longer attempting to suppress these fears. Instead of retreating into isolation, he acknowledges them, confronts them, and uses them as motivation to grow emotionally. One of the most powerful aspects of Batman's growth is his ability to accept his vulnerabilities. For the first time, Batman begins to understand that being vulnerable does not make him weak, it makes him human. His need for control, which was once a shield against the pain of his past, starts to shift from a defense mechanism into a tool for growth. Batman learns that his past trauma does not define him. It is his ability to overcome that trauma, to be open to help, and to trust in the people around him that defines his strength. This emotional growth also brings Batman closer to his allies. He allows himself to form deeper connections with Robin, Alfred, and even Commissioner Gordon. His need for control no longer forces him to push people away. Instead, Batman's relationships become a source of support, camaraderie, and trust. This shift in his approach to relationships not only strengthens his team, but also enhances his emotional resilience, allowing him to face the ever-growing challenges that Gotham presents. The power of vulnerability. Batman sits impact on Gotham Sip's future. Batman's growth also extends to his relationship with Gotham itself. The city, once defined by its corruption, violence, and despair, begins to change in response to Batman's transformation. Gotham's people, inspired by the Dark Knight's willingness to confront his own fears and vulnerabilities, begin to adopt a more collective approach to their city's recovery. Batman's shift from a solitary figure to a leader who values collaboration sets the stage for a new era in Gotham's history. One where the people of the city are no longer passive bystanders, but active participants in the fight for justice. As Batman becomes more open and empathetic, Gotham begins to reflect these changes. The city's once divided communities begin to work together, and citizens rally behind the idea that they can take control of their future. The rising tide of hope in Gotham is fueled by Batman's willingness to embrace vulnerability, as well as his example of resilience in the face of adversity. The Dark Knight's message that justice is not the responsibility of one person alone, but a collective effort, resonates with the people of Gotham. This shift in Gotham's dynamic is critical to the city's long-term recovery. No longer is Gotham dependent solely on Batman's efforts. Instead, the city begins to rebuild itself, with Batman leading the charge, but with the understanding that Gotham's true strength lies in its people, not in one man's mission. Batman's transformation into a more emotionally grounded leader is a key element in inspiring Gotham to take charge of its future, reclaiming the city from the depths of corruption and despair. Batman Sip's legacy, a symbol of resilience, collaboration, and human strength. As the years pass, Batman's legacy evolves. No longer just a symbol of fear or justice, he becomes a symbol of resilience. The Dark Knight's journey, from the solitary figure driven by an obsessive need for control to a collaborative leader who embraces vulnerability, marks a profound shift in his character and his impact on Gotham. Batman's strength is no longer defined by his ability to dominate or control. It is defined by his ability to rise above his fears, to trust others, and to continue fighting for Gotham's future, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Batman's legacy becomes one of growth and emotional strength. His evolution demonstrates that true heroism is not about perfection or invulnerability. It is about the courage to face one's own limitations and the resilience to keep fighting in the face of adversity. Gotham and its citizens learn that they too have the power to rise from failure, to overcome their own darkness, and to create a better future. The shift from Batman's desire for control to his acceptance of vulnerability represents not just his personal growth, but a broader shift in the nature of heroism itself. Batman's impact on Gotham is no longer about him controlling the city's fate, but about inspiring others to take responsibility for their own. In this way, Batman's fight against crime becomes not just a battle for Gotham's soul, but a reflection of his own journey toward acceptance, trust, and ultimately, the strength that comes from embracing both his strengths and vulnerabilities. As Batman's journey unfolds and his internal transformation deepens, the ramifications of his shift from a solitary crusader to a more open and collaborative leader are felt not only in his personal life, but across Gotham itself. His decision to open up, trust his allies, and embrace vulnerability is a turning point, one that catalyzes both his evolution and the city's recovery. Gotham, once a city trapped in the grip of crime and corruption, begins to see Batman not just as a figure of fear, but as a symbol of strength through resilience, adaptability, and cooperation. Batman's role in shaping Gotham's future, rebuilding the city. Gotham's transformation under Batman's leadership takes on a new dimension, rooted in the lessons he's learned from his fight against crime and his own inner battles. Batman's evolution as a leader is mirrored in the way the city begins to recover from its decades of corruption and violence. Once a city that thrived on fear and oppression, Gotham now starts to embrace a more hopeful, collective future, one where its citizens take ownership of their own fate. Rather than seeing Gotham as a place that can only be fixed through violence or brute force, Batman starts to use his resources to help build institutions that can support the city's long-term recovery. No longer just focused on taking down criminals, Batman turns his attention to the roots of Gotham's problems: poverty, social inequality, and political corruption. His fight for justice expands beyond the streets into the hearts of Gotham's institutions, encouraging reform from within. Working alongside Commissioner Gordon, Lucius Fox, and even allies like Catwoman and Robin, Batman fosters a sense of unity within Gotham's forces of good. He encourages the police to rebuild their relationship with the community, creating initiatives that focus on rehabilitation and restorative justice. The criminal element, which once had its foothold in the city's very infrastructure, is dismantled not just through force, but through changes in the way Gotham's citizens approach law enforcement, government, and social responsibility. In this new era, Batman's role in Gotham's recovery is not that of a lone figure wielding power, but as a leader guiding others to share in the responsibility. His realization that Gotham's true strength comes from collective action, from the people working together, allows the city to begin healing in ways that his past methods of control could never achieve. Trust and responsibility. Batman sets relationship with his allies. Central to this shift in Gotham's dynamic is Batman's evolving relationship with his allies. The trust that he now places in them, not just in their abilities, but in their ideas and strategies, marks a monumental change in how he leads. While Batman was once distant, often rejecting help in favor of maintaining control, he now recognizes the power of collaboration. His relationship with Robin, who once struggled to prove himself as more than just Batman's sidekick, evolves into a true partnership, where they each respect and learn from one another. Robin's ability to take on more leadership and responsibility reflects Batman's own growth. No longer does he view Robin as merely an assistant in his mission. Batman now sees him as a fellow protector of Gotham, capable of making decisions and carrying out their shared mission independently. This evolution in Batman's mentorship allows Robin and other allies to flourish, taking on greater roles within the fight for Gotham's future. Batman's trust in his allies extends beyond Robin. The relationship with Commissioner Gordon, once strained by Batman's insistence on working outside the law, grows stronger. Batman and Gordon begin to work more closely together, combining their strengths to restore order to Gotham. Gordon, who represents the traditional legal system, and Batman the vigilante, complement each other in this new phase of their partnership. This duality, of working within and outside the system, becomes a defining feature of their collaboration. Alfred, too, becomes an even more integral part of Batman's journey. No longer just the trusted butler, Alfred becomes a voice of wisdom, offering counsel that Batman is now more willing to accept. Alfred's understanding of Batman's vulnerabilities and his ability to remind him of his humanity makes him an indispensable part of the process of rebuilding Gotham. This father-son-like relationship deepens, offering Batman the emotional support he had once rejected. The evolution of Gotham sips symbolism, from fear to hope. Gotham itself undergoes a subtle yet important transformation. The symbol of Batman, once one of fear, now shifts to one of hope. Gotham's citizens, having witnessed Batman's growth, begin to see him not as a symbol of solitary justice, but as a beacon of collective resilience. The bat signal, once a call for Batman's intervention, begins to take on a new meaning, no longer just a summons for the Dark Knight, but a symbol of the shared responsibility that Gotham's people now carry in their fight for justice. The transformation of the bat signal mirrors the city's own rebirth. Gotham, which had long relied on Batman's intervention, now finds its own power. The bat signal becomes a symbol of unity and determination, a reminder that the people of Gotham, not just Batman, have the strength to overcome the chaos and corruption that once defined their city. Batman no longer operates in the shadows as a lone avenger, but as the leader of a larger movement, a movement where everyone plays a part in the city's restoration. Gotham sips resistance to corruption, Batman sips legacy of collective justice. In addition to Batman's emotional evolution, the city of Gotham begins to push back against its own history of corruption. No longer passive in its suffering, Gotham rises up in defiance of the criminal empire that once ruled its streets. Batman's efforts to create sustainable change within the city's institutions take root, as the criminal underworld is gradually dismantled, not just through force but through reform and the rebuilding of Gotham's social fabric. As Batman collaborates with various figures in the city, including politicians, business leaders, and community organizations, a new narrative for Gotham begins to emerge, one where justice is not achieved through the control of a single figure, but through the collective effort of its citizens. Batman's legacy is no longer confined to the dark corners of Gotham's streets, but is etched into the very institutions that govern and protect the city. This shift in Gotham's culture, from one of dependency to one of empowerment, becomes the ultimate triumph of Batman's transformation. The lessons he learned from his battles, his understanding of vulnerability, his acceptance of the need for collaboration, and his acknowledgement of the limits of control are reflected in the city's recovery. Gotham's revival is no longer dependent on one man's actions, but on the collective strength of those who choose to fight for its future. The continuing legacy of Batman sips evolution. As Batman watches Gotham from the shadows, he understands that his role has changed. He is no longer the solitary figure imposing order on the city, Instead, he is the symbol of a new Gotham, one that values unity, collaboration, and resilience. His fight against crime was never about achieving perfection or absolute control. It was about learning to adapt, grow, and empower others in the process. His legacy is not built on the fear he instilled in criminals, but on the hope he inspired in the people of Gotham. Batman's journey has come full circle. The boy who sought to control his destiny and the fate of Gotham has learned that true strength lies not in control, but in resilience, collaboration, and the willingness to trust others. As Gotham continues to heal, Batman knows that his role has evolved. He may have started as a figure of vengeance, but he now stands as a symbol of collective hope, one that shows Gotham that even in the face of the darkest challenges, the light of resilience can lead the way forward. As Batman's evolution continues, the true weight of his transformation becomes clear. No longer defined solely by his past trauma or his obsessive need for control, Batman steps into a new chapter of his life, one where his role as Gotham's protector is no longer based on his ability to defeat criminals alone. His understanding of justice, collaboration, and vulnerability has shifted his mission into something far more powerful than a lone fight against evil. It is now a movement for the future of Gotham itself. The broader impact of Batman City's leadership. A shift in Gotham's moral fabric. Gotham begins to feel the ripple effects of Batman's transformation. The city's people, who once viewed him as a symbol of fear, start to understand that Batman's true power lies not in his ability to strike fear into criminals, but in his capacity to inspire hope and change. Gotham's residents, from the richest businessmen to the everyday citizens, begin to rally behind the ideals that Batman has come to embody: resilience, collaboration, and justice. This shift is seen not just in the efforts of Batman and his allies, but in how Gotham's people take ownership of their own city. The Bat Signal, once a signal of Batman's solitary intervention, now represents the collective effort of the city's inhabitants to take responsibility for their own future. Where Gotham once had a fragile faith in a single figure, it now begins to thrive on the collective belief that justice and order are possible through unity. In Gotham's neighborhoods, community leaders and organizations begin to rise, inspired by Batman's example of empowerment. Crime rates drop, not because of Batman's relentless pursuit of criminals, but because of the people's own commitment to rebuilding their city. Gotham's institutions, once tainted with corruption, begin to reform from within as Batman's influence spreads to the very structures that have long held the city captive. His influence is no longer just felt in the shadows of the streets. It's embedded in the foundation of Gotham's government, law enforcement, and civic engagement. The enduring legacy of Batman City's transformation, a symbol of hope for future generations. Batman's legacy, shaped by his acceptance of his vulnerabilities and his willingness to embrace collaboration, becomes a beacon of hope for future generations. The lessons Batman learned through his personal struggles, accepting failure, trusting others, and understanding that true justice is about more than controlling every outcome, resonate with the people of Gotham. In a city once defined by corruption, violence, and anarchy, Batman's transformation into a figure of unity and hope provides a model for how communities can rebuild themselves in the face of overwhelming challenges. Gotham's young heroes, those who look up to Batman as an inspiration, now understand that heroism is not about perfection or invincibility. It is about resilience, the ability to adapt, and the courage to work alongside others in the pursuit of justice. Batman's message echoes through the streets. True strength does not come from dominating the world around you, but from facing your own fears and limitations, and using them to rise above adversity. Future leaders in Gotham, influenced by Batman's actions, begin to emerge. They follow in his footsteps, not as lone vigilantes, but as leaders who understand the importance of collaboration and shared responsibility. Batman's journey from a solitary, controlling figure to a more vulnerable, trusting leader becomes a model for how leadership can be built on trust, empathy, and the strength of community. The lasting change in Batman Sip's character, a new definition of strength. As Batman reflects on his journey, he understands that his evolution was not just about becoming a better hero, it was about becoming a better person. The man who once sought to control everything, to dictate the outcomes of every battle, has now learned the value of vulnerability, trust, and the collective strength of Gotham's people. He is no longer just a figure of vengeance or a symbol of fear. He is a symbol of growth and transformation, showing the people of Gotham that true strength comes not from control, but from resilience in the face of fear and uncertainty. Batman's fear, once a driving force that kept him isolated and obsessive, has now become a source of power, a power that connects him to the people he protects. In learning to face his own limitations, Batman has become not just a protector of Gotham, but a guardian of its future. His fight against crime is no longer about control. It is about ensuring that Gotham's future is one where justice, hope, and community prevail. A new era for Gotham. Batman Sip's legacy of transformation. As Gotham moves forward, it carries with it the legacy of Batman's transformation. The city, once a battleground of crime and corruption, is slowly rebuilding itself, not just through the efforts of one man, but through the combined efforts of the people who now believe in a better future. Batman's struggle, once defined by his need to control, has become a story of redemption. A story about a hero who learned that his greatest strength was not in his power to dominate, but in his ability to inspire and unite others. Gotham, with its renewed sense of hope, continues to thrive under the watchful eyes of its protectors, its heroes, its citizens, and its leaders. The bat signal still shines in the sky, but now it represents not just Batman's presence, but the collective will of Gotham's people to continue the fight for a better future. Batman's evolution from a figure of fear to a symbol of hope is not just a personal triumph, it is a victory for Gotham itself, showing that even in the darkest of times there is always a chance for change, growth, and redemption. As Batman's transformation continues, the city of Gotham finds itself at a crossroads. The once overwhelming chaos, the deep-seated corruption, and the fear that permeated every corner of the city begin to lose their grip. Gotham is slowly beginning to heal, but the journey is far from over. The lasting effect of Batman's evolution, however, is undeniable. His decision to relinquish his obsessive need for control and to embrace a more collaborative approach to justice sets in motion a new era for Gotham, one where the battle against crime is not fought by one man but by the collective will of its people. A new generation of Gotham Sip's heroes. Gotham, inspired by Batman's evolution, begins to produce a new generation of heroes. These heroes do not operate in the shadows alone, but work in unison with the people of Gotham. They are a reflection of the values Batman has come to embrace: resilience, trust, and unity. Young crime fighters, once shaped by Batman's solitary example, now look to Batman as a symbol of collaboration rather than isolation. Batgirl, Batwoman, and other vigilantes in Gotham's ranks adopt Batman's legacy, but with a fresh perspective. They are no longer bound by the same need for control that defined Batman's earlier years. Instead, they work as a team, often coordinating with Gotham's police force and community leaders to create a multifaceted approach to crime fighting. Batman's impact on their methods and philosophies is clear. They learn that being a hero is not about working alone, but about building alliances, sharing responsibility, and understanding that real justice is about more than just punishing criminals. It's about creating lasting change in the system that breeds crime. The legacy of Batman's willingness to trust and collaborate is also reflected in how Gotham's leaders, whether in law enforcement, politics, or social services, begin to work together. The city, long divided by corruption and factions, begins to embrace a more unified approach to governance. Batman, through his actions, shows that while he cannot control every outcome, he can influence those around him, empowering them to make a difference in their own way. Batman Sip's role as a mentor and protector. In this new era, Batman assumes a new role not just as a vigilante, but as a mentor and protector of Gotham's future. His once rigid, isolated approach to crime fighting has shifted into a more holistic, guiding role. Batman's purpose is no longer about fighting crime for the sake of his own redemption, but about ensuring the longevity of the work that has been done. He works with Gotham's new generation of heroes, guiding them, teaching them, and helping them navigate the complexities of their mission. This shift in role also extends to his relationship with his most trusted ally, Robin. No longer viewed as merely a sidekick, Robin, and later Nightwing, becomes Batman's equal partner in crime fighting. Batman's ability to mentor and allow Robin to take the lead in certain situations reflects the trust he now places in others. The dynamic between Batman and his allies grows stronger as Batman no longer insists on controlling every aspect of their mission. Instead, he trusts his allies to make decisions, and in doing so, he empowers them to become leaders in their own right. Gotham Sip's resilience, a city reborn. Gotham, while still far from perfect, begins to show signs of real recovery. The people, once terrified of the criminals that ruled the streets, now feel empowered to stand up for their city. Batman's influence is no longer limited to the shadows or the rooftops. It spreads throughout the city, inspiring citizens to fight for change in their own ways. Gotham's neighborhoods begin to rebuild, not just physically but socially and morally. The sense of community that Batman once lacked is now central to Gotham's identity. The corrupt political figures who once thrived in the chaos of Gotham's disarray begin to fall as the city rallies behind those who seek to bring about real reform. Gotham's institutions, once rotting from within, start to rebuild themselves, inspired by Batman's belief that justice is not simply about controlling the criminals, but about addressing the systems that allow corruption to thrive. This, in turn, creates a more stable foundation for Gotham, where the focus shifts from dealing with the symptoms of crime to addressing the causes. Batman Sip's relationship with Gotham Sip's criminal underworld. While Batman's role as a mentor, protector, and symbol of hope grows, his relationship with Gotham's criminal underworld remains complex. The city's crime bosses and villains, while no longer able to operate with impunity, continue to be a threat. However, Batman's approach to dealing with these criminals evolves. Instead of simply eliminating them from the streets, Batman now works to dismantle the structures of criminal power in more sustainable ways. Batman, with the support of Gotham's law enforcement, becomes more strategic in his approach. He works with local authorities, legal experts, and even reformed criminals to infiltrate and break down the criminal empires that have entrenched themselves in the city's underworld. This collaborative approach, where Batman's role is not that of a solitary avenger, but of a strategist, reflects the maturation of his mission. His understanding that crime cannot be defeated through force alone becomes the cornerstone of his tactics, leading to a more lasting impact on Gotham's criminal landscape. The enduring legacy. Batman's symbol of redemption and hope. As Gotham continues its journey toward recovery, Batman's legacy becomes a beacon of hope for the future. He is no longer just the Dark Knight, the vigilante who fights alone. He is the embodiment of the city's transformation, a symbol of redemption not just for Gotham but for himself. His fight was never just about defeating criminals. It was about confronting his own fears, understanding his limitations, and learning to work with others to achieve a greater good. Batman's willingness to embrace vulnerability and trust others is what sets him apart from the other heroes and vigilantes in Gotham. His legacy is no longer just one of fear and justice, it is one of growth, transformation, and the power of collaboration. Gotham, once a city lost in chaos, now begins to rebuild itself, and Batman is no longer its solitary guardian, but a symbol of what can be achieved when a community works together toward a common goal. The bat signal, once a call for Batman's intervention, now represents the collective will of Gotham's people. It shines not as a summons for Batman to fight alone, but as a reminder that the city's fight for justice is one that belongs to everyone. As Gotham continues to evolve under Batman's leadership, the changes ripple outward, influencing not just the city's infrastructure, but its very identity. Batman's transformation from a solitary figure driven by the need for control to a collaborative leader becomes an enduring symbol of the city's capacity for change. With the bat signal now representing a collective effort rather than a lone protector, Gotham begins to grow beyond its past. However, with this new hope comes new challenges. Gotham's criminal elements, though weakened, remain formidable. Batman's struggle is far from over, but now the fight takes on a new dimension. The city is no longer just a battleground for criminals and vigilantes. It is a city in flux, caught between the remnants of its old self and the possibilities of a new future. The new challenges. Gotham's struggle with its legacy. Gotham's transformation is not without its challenges. The scars of the city's past, its corruption, violence, and entrenched criminal systems are not easily erased. While Batman's leadership has created a new sense of unity, there are still pockets of resistance within the city that push back against change. The remnants of organized crime, political corruption, and the deep distrust of the system linger, making Gotham's future uncertain. Batman, as Gotham's leader, finds himself in the unique position of not just fighting crime, but also dealing with the systemic issues that prevent the city from fully healing. While Batman's allies and the citizens of Gotham continue to fight alongside him, the road to recovery is long and fraught with setbacks. Every victory against a criminal organization, every arrest of a notorious villain, reveals just how much work remains to be done. Gotham's soul, its social and political fabric is still fragile, and the new era Batman has ushered in is tested by the deep-seated forces of resistance that want to keep the city's status quo intact. Batman's role as a leader evolves once more. No longer can he simply rely on his strength and intellect to outmaneuver criminals. He must now become more than a symbol of justice. He must be a bridge between the past and the future. He must navigate the complexities of a city that is healing, but still deeply scarred, understanding that true change requires more than just the defeat of criminals. It requires the dismantling of the systems that perpetuate their existence. The rise of new threats, Gotham sips old wounds. Even as Gotham begins to rebuild itself, new threats emerge from the shadows. Gotham's criminal underworld, although fractured, has not disappeared entirely. New players, some born from the chaos left in the wake of Batman's past battles, and others who seek to exploit the city's vulnerabilities, rise to challenge the city's newfound hope. These new villains, much like the ones Batman has fought before, exploit Gotham's systemic weaknesses and work to pull the city back into the darkness. Yet, the difference now is the approach Batman takes to these new threats. Instead of working alone in the shadows, he recognizes that Gotham's recovery depends on the collaboration of all its citizens. Batman works with Gotham's police, politicians, and even former criminals who have seen the value of reform. This approach does not mean that the battle against crime is over, far from it, but it signifies a new phase in Batman's role as a protector. The battles ahead are not just about taking down individual criminals. They are about dismantling the larger systems of power and corruption that sustain them. Batman's fight against Gotham's criminals is now more strategic. He understands that eliminating crime requires more than physical action. It requires addressing the root causes of Gotham's instability. This marks a significant shift from his past mission, where he focused only on controlling the criminals on the streets. Batman now focuses on collaborating with those in positions of power, within the law and outside it, to bring about systemic changes that can truly reshape Gotham's future. The emotional cost of leadership. Batman SEP's personal struggles. Despite his growth as a leader, Batman's journey is far from easy. His personal struggles continue to weigh heavily on him. The trauma of losing his parents, his fear of losing control, and the loneliness that comes with being a protector all contribute to an emotional burden that Batman cannot shake. While he has learned to trust his allies and rely on the people of Gotham, there are moments when the weight of responsibility becomes unbearable. Batman, despite his growth, still grapples with his own inner darkness. The desire to protect Gotham, to maintain control, and to prevent the city from slipping back into chaos often brings him back to his past, his fears, his guilt, and his sense of failure. Each new challenge, each new loss, brings him closer to the edge. However, it is in these moments that Batman's growth truly shines. Instead of succumbing to despair or returning to his old habits of isolation and control, he learns to lean on those who have helped him along the way. Alfred, his faithful butler and confidant, remains a pillar of support. Alfred's wisdom, patience, and love help Batman confront the emotional cost of his leadership. Where once Batman saw vulnerability as weakness, he now learns that it is the key to his strength. Allowing himself to feel, to grieve, and to lean on those he trusts becomes a critical part of Batman's personal growth. The legacy of change. Gotham SIP's future. As Batman continues to guide Gotham through its turbulent transformation, his legacy solidifies as a symbol not just of justice, but of hope, resilience, and collaboration. Gotham, a city that once stood on the edge of collapse, begins to chart its own course, a course shaped by the ideals that Batman instilled in its people, the belief that unity, strength, and compassion can overcome even the darkest of times. Though Batman will never completely rid Gotham of its criminals or heal all of its wounds, he has built something more lasting, a foundation for the future. Gotham is no longer a city at the mercy of its past. It is a city that has learned from its mistakes and has begun to heal one step at a time. Batman's transformation from the man who once sought to control everything to the leader who embraced vulnerability and collaboration has set the stage for a brighter future for Gotham. The bat signal, now shining across the city, is not just a call for Batman's intervention. It is a call to action for everyone in Gotham. The city's future depends not on the power of one man, but on the collective strength of those who are willing to fight for justice, equality, and peace. Batman's journey has taught Gotham that its greatest strength lies in its people, and together they are capable of overcoming any challenge that lies ahead. As Gotham continues its path toward recovery, the ripple effect of Batman's transformation reaches every corner of the city. The change in the city's character and its people is visible, but the journey to true stability is long and winding. Batman's role as a leader, mentor, and symbol has reshaped the city, but there are still deep-rooted challenges. These challenges, some old, some new, test not only Batman's resolve, but also the very foundation of Gotham's new hope. The persistence of Gotham's criminal elements. Despite Batman's strategic shift in the city's collective efforts, Gotham's criminal elements have not been fully eradicated. While many of Gotham's criminals have been arrested or subdued, the deep-seated systems of corruption that have plagued the city for decades continue to reassert themselves. These criminals, once deterred by Batman's solitary war against crime, now adapt to the changing dynamics of Gotham. New criminals rise, taking advantage of the cracks in Gotham's reforms, testing the resilience of both the city and Batman's mission. However, Batman no longer faces these challenges alone. With his newfound understanding of collaboration, he forms alliances with Gotham's law enforcement, local leaders, and even former criminals who are now working toward reform. His trust in others has allowed the city to tackle crime in a more organized and sustainable manner. Together with Commissioner Gordon, Nightwing, Batgirl, and others, Batman begins to address not just the criminals themselves, but the structures that have allowed them to thrive for so long. Despite their ongoing challenges, Gotham's heroes, both new and old, work in unison, sharing knowledge, skills, and resources. This new approach makes Gotham's defense stronger, not just in force, but in intelligence and unity. Batman has realized that no single hero can bear the full weight of Gotham's protection. The city's salvation lies in the collective will of those who believe in its potential for change. The shift in Gotham's social fabric, rebuilding from the ground up. Gotham's transformation is not just about its criminal element, it is about rebuilding its social fabric. Batman's leadership extends beyond his physical battles with villains. He has become a force for social reform, working with local organizations, community leaders, and schools to rebuild the city's fractured neighborhoods. The trauma that the citizens of Gotham have endured for generations cannot be undone overnight, but Batman's commitment to collaboration provides a framework for real change. Gotham schools, once underfunded and overwhelmed with crime, begin to see more resources funneled into them. Batman, through his various partnerships, pushes for programs that help at-risk youth, offering them guidance, mentorship, and opportunities for a better future. This effort, while slow and difficult, begins to pay dividends, as young people in Gotham begin to see themselves as active participants in the city's recovery, rather than as victims of its cycle of violence. Similarly, Batman and his allies work to bring social services into Gotham's most vulnerable communities, tackling issues like homelessness, drug abuse, and poverty, issues that have long fueled the city's criminal elements. By addressing the root causes of crime, Batman and his allies begin to change the dynamic of Gotham itself, moving away from a city of despair to one of opportunity. Gotham sits, growing trust in its leaders. Another significant shift in Gotham is the growing trust between its people and its leaders. Commissioner Gordon, once the lone voice of law enforcement in a sea of corruption, now works more closely with Batman and Gotham's community leaders. As the city becomes more stable, law enforcement begins to adopt a more community-oriented approach, emphasizing rehabilitation over punishment and working with social programs to prevent crime before it begins. Gotham's citizens, who once viewed the police force with distrust due to years of corruption, now begin to see them as allies in the fight for justice. With Batman's influence, the people of Gotham begin to believe that their voices matter. They are no longer passive victims of the city's problems, but active participants in its recovery. Citizens now volunteer their time to help rebuild neighborhoods, support reformed criminals, and advocate for policies that prioritize justice, equality, and safety for all. The burden of Batman's legacy, striking a balance. Despite the progress Gotham has made, the burden of Batman's legacy weighs heavily on him. He is no longer just the protector of the city. He is the embodiment of the city's transformation. The city looks to him as a symbol of hope, but Batman is acutely aware of the fragility of the change he has helped to usher in. He knows that Gotham can slip back into chaos if its people lose sight of what they have fought for. While he continues to serve as a protector, he must also balance his responsibility to lead with the realization that the future of Gotham no longer depends solely on him. As Batman works with his allies, he begins to accept that his fight is not over, it is only changing. The rise of new heroes, the collective effort to restore Gotham's institutions, and the ongoing battle against crime will require his guidance, but it will also require the dedication of the entire city. Batman's legacy is no longer just about fighting villains or protecting the innocent. It is about inspiring others to continue the work he started, ensuring that the next generation of heroes and leaders will carry the mantle of justice long after he is gone. A city reborn, Gotham steps future in a new light. Gotham, once a symbol of corruption, despair, and lawlessness, now stands on the precipice of a new era. The work that Batman and his allies have done, the partnerships they've forged, and the collective effort of Gotham's people have started to show real results. The city's future is uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, there is hope. Batman's evolution into a leader who values collaboration and vulnerability has reshaped Gotham's moral and social fabric, and the people of Gotham are beginning to see that change is possible. Batman's role as a hero has changed. He is no longer just a figure of fear, but a symbol of resilience and hope. Gotham, inspired by his example, understands that its future will not be shaped by fear, but by the collective strength of those willing to fight for it. Gotham's fight against crime and corruption is ongoing, but the people now know that they are not alone in this struggle. They have Batman, but more importantly, they have each other. The city's recovery is not guaranteed, but the path forward is clearer. Gotham, once lost in its darkness, is now beginning to find its light. Batman's legacy is one of growth, collaboration, and redemption, not just for him, but for the entire city. As Gotham steadily emerges from the darkness of its past, its future begins to take shape in ways that are more profound than anyone could have predicted. Batman's influence, once solely focused on crime fighting, has evolved into something much broader and far-reaching. His decision to embrace vulnerability, collaboration, and trust not only reshapes his own character, but also lays the groundwork for a Gotham that thrives on collective effort, unity, and resilience. Yet with new hope comes the undeniable reality that Gotham's challenges are far from over. There are still forces, internal and external, that threaten to undo the progress made. The return of old threats, Gotham's underworld, regenerates. Despite the growing optimism, Gotham's underworld, though severely weakened, is not fully eradicated. The remnants of the city's criminal empire, corrupt organizations, gangs, and the surviving remnants of its most dangerous villains are not easily silenced. Gotham's criminal underworld regenerates in new, more complex forms, adapting to the changing environment. While some of the old players are gone, new faces rise, many driven by the same greed, thirst for power, and desire to fill the void left by Batman's relentless pursuit of justice. These criminals are not just figures operating in isolation. With Batman's shift toward collaboration and trust, they too begin to realize that their survival lies in adapting to Gotham's new reality. They work together, forging alliances, and seeking to exploit the city's vulnerabilities, gaps in law enforcement, fractured political systems, and the occasional cracks in Batman's collaborative efforts. These new threats challenge Batman and his allies to reassess their strategies, to refine their efforts, and to realize that true stability will never come without constant vigilance. Batman, now more than ever, understands that his battle is not against individual villains alone, but against a systemic force. Gotham's criminal elements cannot be defeated simply by locking away a few key players. The entire structure of crime, corruption, and systemic failure needs to be dismantled. This requires more than Batman's personal mission. It requires a concerted effort across all layers of society. The role of Gotham's citizens in the fight for justice. With Gotham's transformation comes a new understanding of justice. Batman's shift from a lone protector to a mentor and leader has sparked a transformation in the city's people. Gotham's citizens are no longer passive victims of crime, but active participants in its redemption. The public, now empowered by the success of Batman's collaboration with law enforcement and social reformers, starts to take their city's future into their own hands. Community-driven initiatives begin to flourish. Citizens who once felt powerless to change their neighborhoods are now working to rebuild them. They are taking steps to make sure the mistakes of the past do not repeat themselves. Crime prevention programs are launched in schools, job training initiatives are provided to former criminals, and support systems for those struggling with mental illness or substance abuse are put in place. Gotham's people understand that the fight for justice extends beyond the streets, reaching into the very heart of the city's social fabric. Batman's role in this movement is subtle, but pivotal. He is no longer just a figure fighting in the shadows. Instead, he supports the efforts of the people, guiding them, inspiring them, and ensuring that their progress doesn't falter. He no longer needs to lead the charge alone. His true strength lies in his ability to empower Gotham citizens to take ownership of their city's future. Gotham becomes a living testament to the idea that true justice cannot be imposed from above, but must be a collective effort. The emotional and psychological toll on Batman. However, Batman's journey toward collaboration and leadership is not without its cost. The emotional and psychological toll of his past actions continues to haunt him. As Gotham begins to recover, Batman finds himself reflecting on the years of isolation, control, and sacrifice he made. Despite the progress Gotham has made, Batman still struggles with his need for control, his fear of failure, and the deep-rooted trauma from the loss of his parents. As a leader, Batman now bears the weight not just of his mission, but of his city's future. The responsibility of ensuring that Gotham does not fall back into chaos rests heavily on his shoulders. The fear of failure, of letting Gotham slip back into darkness, remains his greatest struggle. But through his relationships with his allies and the people of Gotham, Batman begins to confront these inner demons more directly. He learns that true strength doesn't lie in avoiding his pain. It lies in facing it, acknowledging it, and using it as a source of motivation to continue the fight. His relationship with Alfred continues to be a crucial anchor. Alfred, who has always been Batman's moral compass, now plays a more active role in helping Batman confront the emotional cost of his leadership. It is through Alfred's wisdom and guidance that Batman begins to understand that while his pain may never fully go away, it is no longer his burden to bear alone. Gotham sips new guard, a new era of leadership. With Batman's influence, Gotham's next generation of leaders begins to emerge. No longer does the city rely solely on one figure in the shadows. The people of Gotham, empowered by the changes Batman has instilled in them, begin to take charge of their own destiny. The new generation of heroes, young, driven, and connected to the community, work with Batman to ensure that the city's future remains in safe hands. Robin, now Nightwing, takes on a more significant role in Gotham's defense. His growth, shaped by Batman's mentorship, allows him to lead on his own terms, taking responsibility for his city's future in a way that was once unimaginable. Batgirl, too, becomes a key figure in Gotham's ongoing recovery, using her knowledge of the city's inner workings to forge stronger connections between the people and the law enforcement that protects them. Together, they represent the future of Gotham, a future built not on fear or control, but on the collective strength of a united city. Their efforts extend beyond fighting crime. They engage with the youth of Gotham, encouraging them to become agents of change, to see themselves as a vital part of Gotham's ongoing transformation. Gotham's future is no longer just in the hands of a few heroes, but in the hands of every citizen who believes in the possibility of redemption. Batman sips place in Gotham sips legacy. As Gotham continues to rebuild, Batman finds himself transitioning once again. No longer just a figure who works in the shadows, he begins to step back, allowing Gotham's heroes and its people to take on more responsibility. His role is not to control, but to guide, offering wisdom, providing mentorship, and ensuring that the legacy he leaves behind is one of hope, resilience, and justice. Batman understands that his time is not infinite. He has spent his life protecting Gotham, but he knows that true justice is not about one man, but about the collective will of a city. His final act of heroism, perhaps the most significant of all, is stepping aside, knowing that Gotham no longer needs him to save it. Gotham has learned to save itself. And so, as the bat signal shines once again across the city, it no longer represents the call for Batman alone. It represents the united effort of Gotham's citizens, the new generation of heroes, and a city that has learned to rise from the ashes of its past. Gotham's future, though uncertain, is now one filled with hope. As Gotham's journey progresses, the city that once trembled beneath the weight of fear and corruption begins to find its footing. Batman's leadership, mentorship, and legacy have laid the groundwork for this transformation, but it's clear that Gotham's future is still in flux. The old wounds of the city don't heal overnight, and the battle for Gotham's soul continues, albeit in new forms. The fight is no longer just about the survival of the city. It's about ensuring that the values Batman instilled in Gotham's citizens remain strong, even when faced with adversity. Gotham sips new identity. From fear to empowerment. The shadow that once loomed over Gotham, embodied by Batman's relentless crusade, begins to fade as the city takes on a new identity. Gotham, known for its crime and despair, is now starting to be recognized for its resilience, its people, and the collaborative efforts that have begun to reshape its future. Batman, though still a figure of immense influence, no longer carries the burden alone. The city's progress is built not just on the backs of its heroes, but on the shoulders of its citizens. This shift marks a new chapter for Gotham. The city, long defined by fear, corruption, and a never-ending cycle of violence, now sees the potential for a different kind of legacy. It is no longer a place where justice is meted out by one solitary figure in the shadows, but a place where the citizens themselves are empowered to act as agents of change. Gotham becomes a city where the values of hope, resilience, and community action take precedence over fear and retribution. Emergence of new guardians. As the city heals, new heroes rise to stand alongside Batman. These heroes are not just vigilantes, they are symbols of what Gotham can become. They are young, driven, and like Batman, dedicated to protecting the city, but they do so with a greater sense of collaboration and shared responsibility. The emergence of new protectors in Gotham signifies a shift in how justice is perceived. It is no longer an individual pursuit but a communal one. Nightwing, once Batman's protege, steps into a larger role. His development from the young, eager Robin into Nightwing, a leader in his own right, embodies the essence of Batman's mentoring. Nightwing's approach to crime fighting is more open and engaging than Batman's ever was, reflecting the lessons learned through Batman's growth. Batgirl, too, takes on a more prominent position in Gotham's defense. She helps bridge the gap between Batman's old methods and the new, more inclusive way of handling crime in the city. Together, Nightwing and Batgirl represent the changing face of Gotham's future, a future that doesn't rely solely on fear, but on the power of community and shared responsibility. These new heroes work not just in the shadows, but with the people of Gotham. They engage directly with the communities they protect, ensuring that their actions are not just reactive, but proactive. They focus on rehabilitating criminals, addressing systemic issues like poverty and lack of education, and building a more sustainable form of justice that Gotham can rely on for generations to come. Gotham SIPs. Ongoing struggles. The challenge of maintaining unity. Yet, despite the positive changes, Gotham is not without its challenges. The forces that once controlled the city, crime syndicates, corrupt politicians, and the remnants of Batman's old adversaries, don't disappear easily. These elements, though weakened, remain a constant presence in Gotham, and as Gotham evolves, so too do the threats that lurk within it. One of the most pressing issues Gotham faces is the potential for division. The fight for justice has always been a battle against forces that thrive on division and fear. As Gotham's leadership grows more collaborative, there are those who still resist these changes: criminal factions, corrupt leaders, and even some of Gotham's more traditional citizens who distrust the city's shifting dynamics. These forces seek to exploit the cracks in Gotham's new foundation to undermine the efforts to build a more inclusive and just society. Batman, though not the sole leader anymore, remains the figurehead of Gotham's transformation. He continues to guide the city's efforts, working alongside the new generation of heroes. But he is no longer the one who carries all the weight. The lessons he imparted about trust, collaboration, and community are now central to the fight for Gotham's future. Batman has learned to step back when needed, allowing the new leaders to take charge and shape the city's future. However, the emotional toll of his past still lingers, and his struggle to maintain his own sense of purpose continues to affect him. He knows that Gotham's future isn't guaranteed, and every step forward is an ongoing effort to ensure that the city remains on the path of redemption. The lasting influence of Batman SEP's legacy. The most profound effect of Batman's evolution is not just on the city itself, but on the legacy he leaves behind. Gotham, is now a city where justice is not solely in the hands of a few powerful individuals, but in the collective efforts of its citizens. Batman's transformation from a lone figure of fear to a leader who values collaboration and trust has redefined what it means to be a hero. His story is no longer just one of vengeance, but of growth, adaptation, and the ability to inspire others to take responsibility for their own futures. Even though Batman's fight is not over, his role in Gotham has shifted. He is no longer the solitary protector of the city, but a mentor, guiding Gotham's next generation of heroes. The Bat Signal, once a call for Batman to fight alone, now represents a collective effort to protect the city. The people of Gotham, empowered by Batman's example, no longer wait for a savior to come. They are the saviors of their own city. Gotham's future, though uncertain, is now in the hands of its people. They have learned from Batman that true justice doesn't come from fear or control, but from unity, resilience, and the collective will to rise above adversity. Batman's evolution, from the broken man who sought to control his world to the leader who inspired others to take action, will continue to resonate in Gotham for generations. As Gotham continues to evolve, the shift from a city of despair to one of hope and collaboration is tested once more. Batman, despite his transformation and new role, still faces the residual effects of the long battles fought, both external and internal. The stability Gotham is striving for remains fragile, and even though its people are beginning to take charge, old habits die hard, especially in the criminal world, where power is never easily relinquished. The rise of Gotham Cip's new villains, rebirth of the underworld. With the restructuring of Gotham's leadership and its growing sense of hope, the criminal underworld begins to adapt and evolve. The old guard, those who were used to manipulating the city's law enforcement, politics, and social institutions, may be in retreat, but they are not gone. What emerges is a new breed of criminals, smarter, more cunning, and in many cases more sophisticated in their operations. While Gotham's police and citizens have become more unified, the battle for its future is far from won. A new wave of villains rises, not from the chaos of Gotham's streets, but from the shadows of its reformed institutions. This new generation of criminals understands that brute force and terror are no longer as effective as they once were. They seek to manipulate Gotham's burgeoning systems of justice, find new ways to exploit the cracks in the city's reforms, and prey on the vulnerabilities of its recovering structures. Corruption, though much diminished, still festers in the undercurrents of Gotham, and it's this corruption that fuels the rise of new, more insidious threats. This shift in Gotham's criminal landscape is a direct challenge to Batman and his allies. It's no longer enough to fight criminals physically. Gotham's new heroes must be smarter, more strategic, and more connected to the communities they protect. They need to focus on more than just combating visible threats. They need to address the underlying systemic problems that allow these new villains to rise and flourish. The emergence of Gotham Cip's collective resistance. But Gotham has also changed in ways that go beyond crime and corruption. The people of Gotham, having learned from Batman's example, are taking on greater responsibility for their city's future. More and more individuals and community groups are stepping up to fight back, not just against crime, but against the forces that allow corruption to persist in the shadows. This collective resistance takes on many forms, from grassroots organizations fighting to maintain community-based policing to citywide initiatives focused on reforming the justice system. The people of Gotham are more united than ever before, and this new spirit of collective action gives Batman hope that, even if he is no longer the city's sole protector, its future is brighter than it once seemed. The heroes who were once Batman's allies, Robin, Nightwing, Batgirl, and others, continue to work with the people of Gotham, forming bonds with community leaders, social workers, and even former criminals who have seen the light. This new approach to justice, one rooted in community involvement and rehabilitation rather than fear and punishment, begins to show real results. While the fight against crime is still ongoing, the focus has shifted from reactive measures to preventive solutions. Gotham is moving beyond its past mistakes, and though the road ahead is long, the sense of hope that has taken root is undeniable. Batman sits legacy, a symbol of transformation and hope. Through all of these changes, Batman's role continues to evolve. He no longer sees himself as Gotham's sole savior, but as a guiding force, a mentor to the next generation of heroes, and a symbol of what Gotham can become. While he still patrols the streets, fighting alongside his allies, his focus has shifted from control to empowerment. He is no longer a figure who imposes his will on Gotham, but one who inspires others to take responsibility for their own actions and their own future. Batman's evolution. His journey from a man consumed by fear and control to a leader who embraces collaboration and trust has redefined what it means to be a hero. Gotham has learned that true strength does not come from dominance or fear, but from the collective efforts of its people. Batman may still be the city's protector, but the people of Gotham have become its champions. The enduring influence of Gotham's transformation. Gotham's transformation is not just about Batman's evolution. It is about the city's collective growth. No longer defined by its corruption and crime, Gotham has begun to reshape itself into a place where justice, equality, and hope are not just ideals, but tangible goals. Batman's impact is evident in the hearts and minds of the people, in the actions of the new heroes who walk the streets, and in the policies that are being enacted to protect the vulnerable and reform the systems that have failed them. Yet, Gotham's journey is ongoing. The city's past is not easily erased, and the fight for justice is far from over. As new threats continue to arise, Gotham's true strength will be tested time and time again. But Batman's legacy, one of collaboration, hope, and the power of community, will continue to inspire those who rise to defend it. Batman's role has shifted, but his mission remains clear. Gotham's recovery is not about one man's fight, but about the collective strength of its people. And as long as Gotham's heroes continue to embrace unity, trust, and resilience, the city will never again fall into the darkness it once knew. As Gotham adapts to the changes instilled by Batman's leadership, the fight for the city's future enters a new phase, one where not just its heroes but its citizens must continue to step forward. Batman's personal transformation, from a solitary avenger to a symbol of hope and unity, has created a lasting shift in the city's culture. Yet, even in this brighter new era, old habits and threats persist. The challenges Gotham faces are not always external. Sometimes they come from within, testing the very foundations of the city's recovery and Batman's evolving role within it. The emerging dangers, a new kind of war. With Gotham's resurgence, new forms of danger begin to emerge, threats that are less about physical force and more about subtle manipulation, deception, and exploitation. Gotham's criminal elements are no longer the disorganized street gangs they once were. They are now more intelligent, strategic, and patient. These new criminals, often operating under the radar of traditional law enforcement, exploit the weaknesses in Gotham's reformed institutions. Batman's new role, one of leadership and guidance, is tested once again as these threats arise. Instead of facing a single recognizable enemy, Batman is confronted with the more dangerous reality that Gotham's systems, despite all efforts to reform them, are still fragile. The city's battle is no longer just against villains like the Joker or Bane. Now, Gotham must contend with systemic issues, political corruption, economic inequality, and the slow rot that still lingers in the shadows of progress. This new phase of Gotham's struggle is one that requires more than brute strength. It requires intelligence, strategy, and most importantly, the ability to adapt. Batman, having learned from his past mistakes, understands that the fight for Gotham's soul is more complex than ever. He no longer leads with fear alone. His method is now one of influence, collaboration, and awareness. But even as he works alongside Gotham's citizens and allies to confront these new dangers, Batman struggles to remain relevant in a city that is beginning to operate without him as its central figure. The new generation of Gotham's leaders and heroes begin to take more control, and Batman, though still necessary, realizes that his time as the driving force is coming to an end. Gotham sips. New Guardians. The evolution of a heroic legacy. Batman's legacy is no longer solely about his individual battles with crime. It's about the new generation of heroes he has inspired and mentored. Nightwing, Batgirl, Robin, and others now take the forefront in defending Gotham, but their approach to crime is distinctly different from Batman's earlier methods. They embody a more collaborative, community-driven approach to justice. This shift is a direct result of Batman's own evolution, as he has taught them not just how to fight criminals, but how to inspire the city's people to rise up and take responsibility for their future. Each of Gotham's new protectors brings something unique to the table. Nightwing, the once tormented sidekick, has become a true leader, utilizing the skills Batman taught him while adding his own flair to their crime-fighting methods. He is more open to working with Gotham's police force, seeing them not as enemies, but as partners. Batgirl, with her intellect and tech-savvy skills, operates as Gotham's tactical mind, finding innovative ways to stop crime before it starts. Robin, under Batman's mentorship, has grown into a leader in his own right, guiding the younger heroes and working alongside the people of Gotham to combat systemic issues. Together, they represent the culmination of Batman's efforts, not just in Gotham's fight against crime, but in his broader mission to create a lasting legacy of hope and resilience. Batman may have been the catalyst for this change, but it is the new generation of heroes who will continue the work, ensuring that Gotham's recovery is more than just a fleeting moment, but a permanent shift in how the city sees itself. The role of Gotham SIP's people, the heartbeat of change. The greatest testament to Batman's evolution is the city's people. Gotham has become a place where its citizens understand that they are just as much a part of the fight for justice as the heroes who patrol its streets. The people no longer see Batman as a solitary figure who must bear the weight of the city's future alone. Instead, they see themselves as an integral part of the city's recovery. This collective effort is reflected in the city's streets. More community centers are established, focusing on youth empowerment and rehabilitation programs for former criminals. Gotham's neighborhoods are safer, not just because of the heroes who patrol them, but because the citizens themselves are working together to keep them that way. People speak up, demand change, and take action. They recognize that the city's survival no longer depends on Batman's relentless vigilance, but on their own commitment to justice. The transformation in Gotham's social fabric is evident in its schools, workplaces, and local governments. Corruption, once endemic, is slowly replaced by transparency and accountability. Gotham's people are more willing to work with its law enforcement to fight crime, rather than seeing the police as part of the problem. Political leaders, inspired by Batman's example, begin to focus on reforms that create long-term solutions rather than short-term fixes. Batman sits final role, a guide and mentor. As Gotham continues to thrive, Batman's role gradually shifts. No longer the city's sole protector, he becomes a guide, mentor, and consultant to the next generation of Gotham's heroes and leaders. His physical battles grow fewer, and he watches from the shadows, knowing that the city he once had to control is now capable of standing on its own. This shift is not easy for Batman. The desire to control, to keep the city safe from any threat, is still within him. He struggles with the knowledge that Gotham's future no longer depends solely on him. But he understands that true leadership is about empowering others and knowing when to step back and allow others to rise. His acceptance of this reality marks the culmination of his evolution. He has gone from a broken man seeking vengeance to a leader who understands that the true fight for justice is not about domination, but about collaboration and trust. A city reborn. The bat signal shines for all. As Batman steps back, he looks at the bat signal shining across Gotham once more. It's a symbol that will never truly fade, but it no longer serves as a call for Batman alone. It represents the collective fight for Gotham's future, the shared responsibility of all its citizens. The city no longer needs Batman to fight alone. It needs every person who calls Gotham home to take action and contribute to its future. Gotham has changed because its people have changed, and Batman's legacy will continue to inspire those who choose to defend it. The bat signal remains a beacon of hope, but now it shines not just for Batman, but for the city and its people who have risen above the chaos and chosen to stand together against the forces that threaten their world. Gotham's future is no longer uncertain. It is bright, and it belongs to everyone who believes in its potential for greatness. Gotham stands at the precipice of a new era, one forged not in fear and control, but in unity, resilience, and collective responsibility. Batman's journey from a broken, solitary figure driven by the need for control to a leader who embraces trust, collaboration, and mentorship has redefined both him and the city he vowed to protect. His fight for Gotham, once centered on the destruction of crime through isolation and fear, has evolved into a broader mission to inspire the city's people to fight alongside him, to build a Gotham that no longer depends solely on one man, but on the collective strength of its citizens. Through his emotional and psychological growth, Batman learns the true nature of strength, not in invulnerability, but in vulnerability, not in control, but in trust, not in isolation, but in collaboration. His journey was never just about defeating villains or imposing order on Gotham's streets. It was about understanding the deeper need for community, connection, and the shared responsibility to ensure justice and peace endure. Batman's legacy is now defined not by his victories over the criminals who once ruled Gotham's streets, but by his ability to inspire change, to mentor the next generation, and to leave a city on the path to healing. Gotham, once consumed by its own darkness, now finds itself on the road to recovery. Crime still lingers in the shadows, and new threats emerge to test the city's newfound hope, but the people of Gotham no longer look to Batman alone for salvation. They have learned from him, drawn strength from his example, and begun to take charge of their own future. The city is no longer defined by its past traumas or its corruption. It is defined by the resilience of its people, the leadership of its heroes, and the unwavering belief that change is possible, even in the darkest of times. In this new Gotham, the bat signal no longer serves as a call for Batman to act alone. It now represents the collective will of the city's people, a symbol that Gotham's future is no longer dictated by fear, but by the courage of its citizens to stand together against whatever challenges lie ahead. Batman's evolution from a solitary avenger to a figure of hope and collaboration serves as the blueprint for Gotham's rebirth, a city where justice is not imposed from above, but built from within. Batman may no longer be Gotham's sole protector, but his legacy continues to shape the city's future. His transformation has sparked a revolution in the way Gotham approaches justice, crime, and governance. The new generation of heroes, Gotham's citizens, and its leaders all carry the torch he has passed on, ensuring that the fight for a better, safer Gotham is not one man's battle but a collective effort. Gotham's future, though uncertain, is no longer a future of despair and chaos. It is a future of hope. Built on the foundations Batman has laid, a future where the city's strength lies not in its darkest secrets, or in the solitary actions of a single hero, but in the unity, resilience, and determination of its people. Batman's journey may have been defined by his struggle for control, but in the end it is the power of collaboration, trust, and shared responsibility that has truly saved Gotham. In the end, Gotham is reborn, not because of Batman's actions alone, but because the people of Gotham have chosen to rise together in the face of adversity. And as the bat signal shines brightly across the city once more, it serves not just as a call for justice, but as a reminder that Gotham's true strength has always come from within, and that the city's future, whatever it may hold, will be shaped by those who choose to fight for it.